Hello, good morning. Now we'll take in the revision series of SA Standards on Auditing regarding Advanced Auditing Professional Ethics CA Final. We'll take up another standard, that is SA 505, that is external confirmations. So when we discuss about external confirmations, primarily external confirmation is nothing but it is one of the audit procedure that the auditor will follow to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. This has been drafted as a separate standard based upon its importance, that is SA 505, that is external confirmation. What is the definition of external confirmation? External confirmation is nothing but obtaining audit evidence from the outside sources which are outside the entity, to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. This is nothing but external confirmations. So there are five definitions that are involved in this. First, we have discussed already external confirmation. Then we will discuss about positive confirmation request. What is positive confirmation request? Positive confirmation request is nothing but a request or an inquiry letter or request that has been posed to the confirming party, either to agree or disagree to the information present in the request or information requested from the confirming party. This is positive confirmation request. What is the definition of negative confirmation request? Negative confirmation request is the request or inquiry that is posed to the confirming party and asking to the confirming party to respond to the request only if he disagrees with the information contained in the request, then it is negative confirmation request. What is non-response? Non-response is the either an inquiry letter that has been posed to the confirming party where the confirming party has ignored completely the inquiry letter, or he has not responded to the inquiry letter, then it is nothing but what? It is nothing but non-response. And next, fifth definition is what? Fifth definition is exception. What is the definition of exception? Exception is nothing but the difference between the information that has been mentioned in the confirmation letter, information that has been mentioned in the inquiry letter that has been sent to the confirming party, and information that has been present in the accounting records of the entity. If there is difference, that is nothing but exception. So these are the definitions. Now, what is the responsibility of the auditor? This is the objective of the auditor. The objective of the auditor is to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence regarding by getting external confirmation from the confirming parties, from the outside third parties or confirming parties, to arrive at the conclusions on which the auditor's opinion is based. This is nothing but the objective of the auditor. Now we will discuss mainly go into the deep dive into the standard. I think mostly I will cover all of the important topics in SA 505 external confirmations. If there are any pending topics, I will try to cover in the next video, or I will take separate video for covering the pending topics. As far as I will be discussing all the topics as a flow without verifying any, without explaining from the book. I will be orally explaining all the concepts. There might be chances that I will be missing one or two topics which I could not remember. The topics might be covered, or that will be penny topics, or that topics might be covered in the another revision video, if at all I think that those topics are also important. Now let's come to the discussion of SA 505 main topic. What the auditor has to do in respect of external confirmation. First, the auditor has to follow 4 steps. First one is the auditor has to determine the information that has to be confirmed. In this, the auditor has to determine what information or assertions of the entity for which the external confirmation is required. The auditor has to confirm. Once he has confirmed, then he has to determine the confirming party. That is, the auditor has to determine to which parties he has to post the confirmation request. The auditor has to determine based upon the confirming parties. Based upon their knowledge and experience, the auditor has to select the confirming parties who are knowledgeable and from whom he can expect the information. Those parties only the auditor has to determine, and the auditor has to post inquiry letter to those parties only. If the auditor poses the inquiry letter to the confirming parties where the confirming parties doesn't have knowledge of providing information, then in that situation the auditor will get non-response only from that confirming parties. Next, third point is the auditor has to design the confirmation request. The auditor has to design the confirmation request, and he has to, here the auditor has to design the confirmation request. While designing the confirmation request, the auditor has to take into consideration of 6 points. What are the 6 factors that the auditor has to take into consideration? First one is the nature of assertions, risk of material misstatements involved in that assertions, and third one is design, layout and presentation of confirmation request. And fourth one is fourth factor that the auditor has to consider is addresses of the confirming parties. And fifth factor that the auditor has to consider is regarding confirmation request. He has to consider mostly these are the 4 points that the auditor has, 4 factors that the auditor has to consider in designing the confirmation request. Next, once he has designed the confirmation request, then he has to send this confirmation request to the confirming parties. Here the auditor has to mention the addresses, valid addresses to in the confirmation request, so that the confirmation request has been sent to the confirming parties. Here the confirmation request can be sent to the confirming parties. The auditor, before sending the confirmation request to confirming party, the auditor has to validate the addresses of the confirming parties, and only those addresses that are those are valid. For those valid addresses only, the auditor has to send the confirmation request, and the auditor has to mention in the confirmation request clearly that the auditor the responses has to be sent to the auditor directly. Directly. This is the point that the auditor has to mention in the confirmation request. And next point is the external confirmations can be received to the, or the responses to the external confirmation can be received by the auditor either by post, or either by courier, or either by soft copies email. The auditor directly receives the responses to the confirmation request. And there are some of the situations where if there is a situation where the auditor has received, in respect of we will discuss about positive confirmation request and negative confirmation request. So positive confirmation request, the auditor will post positive. If the auditor wants to obtain any confirmation regarding any assertions, then the auditor will draft positive confirmation request. In respect of positive confirmation request, there is one of the risks that the confirming party might overlook the confirmation request, and he will send the response that everything has been tallied, or everything has been proper, or he might agree with the confirmation request without actually looking into the matter or looking into the assertion. This type of risk that auditor might face, then in that situation the auditor will be sending the blank confirmation request. What is blank confirmation request? Blank confirmation request where the auditor will be mentioning the information in the request and mentioning a blank space, where the asking the confirming party to fill the blank space and respond to the confirmation request. But mostly blank confirmation request will result in non-responses. Will result in non-responses as the confirming party has to take additional effort or extra effort to send the responses to the confirmation request. Next, now we will discuss about negative confirmation request. Negative confirmation request, where if the auditor, what is the definition of negative confirmation request? Negative confirmation request where the inquiry letter or confirmation request will be sent to the confirming party, and asking the confirming party to respond to the confirmation request only if he disagrees with the information present in the request. Then that is called as negative confirmation request. Negative confirmation, if the auditor doesn't receive the responses to the negative confirmation request, then he has to pose a follow-up confirmation request as the responses to the confirmation request has not been received in the sufficient time. Specified time, then he can pose a follow-up confirmation request to the confirming party. And negative confirmation the audit evidence that has been received from the negative confirmation request is persuasive audit evidence, less persuasive audit evidence than the audit evidence that has been received from the positive confirmation request. So the auditor, it is not the case that the auditor can take it granted that if the response has not been received for the negative confirmation request, means the everything has been confirmed. The auditor should not take it as granted that everything has been confirmed by the confirming party, as the confirming party has not responded to the negative confirmation request, or the has not responded to the negative confirmation request, or the auditor can what the auditor can do, the has not responded to the negative confirmation request. Here there might be situation that the confirming party might have not received the confirmation request, or might have received the confirmation request, or he has ignored the confirmation request due to time constraints, or he doesn't want to respond to the confirmation request. Generally the confirming party in respect of confirming party respond to the confirmation request only if he disagrees with the information in the request, then he wants to confirm agrees with the confirmation request. If he wants to agrees with the confirmation information present in the confirmation request, then in that situation he doesn't respond to the confirmation request. Obviously, as he has if he doesn't respond, means he has agreed, but he will not respond. Will get a lower response rate in respect of those type of confirmation requests. So in respect of negative confirmation request, we will get more responses, more response rate, because in respect of negative confirmation request, the confirming party respond to the confirmation request only if he disagrees with the information present in the confirmation request or inquiry letter or confirmation request. Next situation is what? Next situation is exception. If the auditor encounter an exception, exception is nothing but what? Exception is nothing but the difference between the information that has for which the confirmation response has been received from the confirming party, and the information that has been present in the accounting records. Then that is nothing but exception. Then if there is exception, then auditor has to apply audit procedures to apply further audit procedures to inquire into the matter, and to ask the management and those charged with governance regarding the exception, and to resolve the matter. If the auditor is unable to resolve the matter by applying further audit procedures also, then auditor has to if the auditor thinks that there is material misstatement exists in the exists, then auditor has to issue modified opinion, either it is a qualified adverse or disclaimer of opinion as per SA 705 by applying the concept of SA 705. If the auditor is unable to receive the sufficient and appropriate audit evidence through the external confirmation, then auditor has to perform alternative audit procedures. So alternative audit procedures can be in respect of account payables and account receivables. In respect of account receivables, the auditor can get confirmation regarding subsequent receipts of payments, or he can see the dispatch of the goods or subsequent receipt of payments. These are in respect of trade receivables. In respect of trade payables, that is these are subsequent disbursements of the payments. So this can be alternative audit procedure that the auditor will follow in respect of external confirmation if the auditor has not received confirmation response to the confirmation request. Subsequent disbursements is one of the thing, and if the goods are present in the go down, and stock goods received note has been verified by the auditor, it can be one of the alternative audit procedure that the auditor will follow. If the auditor is unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence through the alternative audit procedures also, and auditor thinks that if there are material misstatements exist in the financial statements that are material and pervasive, then auditor will issue modified opinion by applying the requirements of SA 705, either qualified opinion, adverse opinion, or disclaimer of opinion, as the case may be. Mostly I have discussed all the concepts, all the important concepts in respect of external confirmation as per SA 505. This is overall a brief summary of SA 505 external confirmation. And in this actually there are some of the practical questions that in respect of external confirmation also some of the practical questions that are present in ICA material, where one of the practical question is the auditor has sent the confirmation request to the confirming party, asking him to respond to the confirmation request, but the auditor has not received any confirmation or any response to the confirmation request. In that situation, what the auditor will do? Obviously, alternative audit procedures auditor will follow, and accordingly, auditor will obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. So that's all for now. We will discuss remaining standards in the next revision series. Thank you.